Welcome to the Institute of African American Males. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe.
All right, we're going to spend more time on this section, talk about gender consciousness. We talk about some really deep stuff here. So you have at the top, you have T'Challa. Just as you have these stories, these stories from the collective unconscious, the cartoon called the cultural archetypes, right? Things that are similar all the way around the world, mythologies, culture, stories, art. These things keep getting repeated over and over. How many of you thought about these cultural archetypes when you watch Black Panther? Right? That's pretty cool, right? You think about how many, you can basically look at Black Panther and you can do it exactly as a Greek drama. Same thing. So anyway, so the reason why this is important, and I'm talking about this double consciousness and consciousness, we're going to shift into our thinking about consciousness of gender. Right? One way we look at our masculinity and being man is about the amount of women that we can attract or attract to us, or about the amount of women that we can get. The alpha male. Right? Is there anyone in this room that doesn't think that they're an alpha male? All this conversation, this is alpha male, this is what alpha males do. Every man thinks that he's alpha male. That's how it is. And I'm going to say every man, I think, from what I've seen and from what the ones that I've talked to, even males who are gay, whatever that means, even gay males feel that they're alpha males. Matter of fact, one of the best alpha males we've ever had was a guy named Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great conquered the known world. Alexander the Great was gay. Can't be more alpha than that. You conquer the whole entire world with an army and a sword. Yeah, you're alpha, right? So the concept about alpha male is really important. And I want us to spend a little bit of time about alpha male. And we're going to tie this all into black males as we go along. So alpha males, there's this concept, alpha male. You're the biggest, you're the strongest, biggest chest, square chin, right? That's alpha male, right? That's what we've talked about. Usually in the room, the biggest, strongest man in the room that's looking, that's not the alpha male. He normally works for the alpha male, right? And the reason why that's important, right, and what really something to think about from the collective unconscious and the subconscious is that the reason why it's difficult to associate the alpha male and what we see in the animal kingdom and nature and apply it to us is a couple of big differences. Number one, in the human world, right, in human species, women pick the men. Men don't pick women. Women pick the guy, right? A little bit of a different concept. Men don't go, I want, no. Girls pick us. That's how it works. How many of you have heard of that song, Don't You Wish Your Girlfriend Was Hot Like Me? You heard of that song? All the girls are laughing, right? All the guys are like, yeah. That song has nothing to do with the guy. That song is about that woman thinking or making sure that she is the alpha woman in the room, right? It's all about her sexuality. She can take anyone's man that she wants. Women choose men don't choose women. So what we think of as alpha male, so let me give you another example. So we think of, yeah, alpha male, yeah, well, it's difficult to compare alpha males to a wolf pack because in a wolf pack, there's typically only one male that mates with just one female in a wolf pack, right? If we look at the apes, the great apes, for example, right? When a female wants to mate, when she goes in the heat, she mates with any available guy that she can find. Now what happens to the more aggressive guys keep the other ones around. They keep the other ones from coming around. They keep that from bear, that's what that. But when the big guys are not looking, they'll mate with anybody. Right? And in the human species, Men don't know when women are ready to mate. We can't see that. So in the nature, the biggest, strongest male, let's say a moose, for example, she gives off a certain scent, or she'll give off a sound, and he's like, ooh, and all the guys, moose go, and all the moose run, and they get there, the first one that gets there, right? That's the alpha male, okay? So ascribing what we think is alpha male is not necessarily accurate. I'll give you one other example. And this is a really good transition to talking about black males and masculinity. Back 100,000 years ago, when we were still living in trees, out in the jungle, doing whatever that we were doing, you can think of the alpha male as a guy who would leave the village, he would go out, he would come back in a day and a half, or a day and a half or 3 days later, and he'd have an animal or a deer. And every time he went out, he came back and he shared it with his family. That's the alpha male, because he was a good hunter. But that's only one type of alpha male. Women are attracted to men. I'm gonna talk to the guys just 1 second. I don't want the girls to listen. Women are attracted to men who are alpha males across multiple domains, not just one, not just the physical strong, but the mental. Kindness. Don't hear that too much, right? So going back 100,000 years ago, the guy who was like, this guy is good. He throws the spear pretty good. This guy can track pretty good. This guy's pretty strong. He can carry pretty good. This guy over here can make a big net. Okay, I'm gonna get all these guys together. All right, guys, you, we're on the team. Let's go this way. They come back a week later with a whole brontosaurus. The alpha male in that particular case is the one who knows how to motivate, engage, and lead other men. Right, so what we think about is the alpha male. Who's the real alpha male? Michael Jordan, the coach. So how does this play a role into black males? Well, a couple of things that happen. When we think about the collective unconscious, there are some things that men need to have. And if we go back into the Greek drama, and the Greek plays, and the African plays, you have this thought. Right? So one of the thoughts is, or one of the concepts you may have heard of the Oedipus complex, where you have an overbearing mother, right? And the overbearing mother typically loves her child, loves her male son, gives him plenty of love, but she raises her daughter. And you've heard that in the African American community, that mothers, and in the African American community, there's a thing that there's more single mothers, right, than other communities. But they love their boys and they raise their daughters. Black women are killing it. Black women in the United States are the largest degree obtaining minority in the United States. They get more degrees, they enter college more, they get master's degrees at a higher rate, and accomplish more, and more likely to apply for college than any other racial ethnic group in the United States, including Asian males. Black women are killing it. Black males, even with the stats that we saw, not so much. There's even evidence that suggests that as the amount of single black mothers in the neighborhood go up, the education attainment level of black males goes down. That's the diet. And so the thinking behind that is that without a strong father, or without fathering involvement, black males can grow up without having a sense of self, without having a representation of themselves to form a mask, their psyche, and how they present to the world. So how do they present themselves to the world? Cool pose. Yeah. Right? And so when you look at hip-hop videos, one of the thinking behind hip-hop videos is kind of like, why are black males acting like Italian gangsters? Right? They call them Gotti. Right? Act like gang members, right? Capone, all that stuff. Why do they do that? Well, it's not so much that black guys are acting like white guys. Those same gangsters who were Irish and Italian, they were modeling their forms of masculinity based on the cowboy movies, right? The Jesse James, right? And so whatever the projection of masculinity at that time, that's something all males, in fact. And white males can look at a hip hop video, some white males can rap. You may have heard of a guy named him. He may be from around here. But there's the adaptation of masculinity, that performance, that mask they can wear. They can wear that cool pose. And so if you can adopt the cool pose, it works in a couple of different ways, and this plays a big role in achieving in the classroom. If you say, yeah, I'm cool, look effortless, make things look effortless, be cool and relax. It works a couple different ways. You go to school, you take a test, you fail, sorry, I'm cool. Get on an A on the test, yeah, I'm cool. Right, so that cool, that's that psyche, that mask, that cool pose can be adopted by men across cultures. But if you take a little bit more time and you lift up that mask a little bit and you look at a little bit deeper behind that mask, young black males who may not have a strong father influence in their lives are looking for something, right? Because their mother, if you look at the openness complex, says this: I'll do everything for you. I'll take care of you. I'll love you. Sometimes they love their sons to a fault for having male attention, right? They may not be getting other places. They overbaby themselves. I'll love you. But the catch is, you can't leave. You have to stay. So these black males don't have any responsibility. And males who don't have any responsibility and never grow up, where do they go? What do they look like? They go to Neverland. Right? They go to Pleasure Island. And if you look at a video, what's a video? It's Pleasure Island. No responsibility at all. You don't have to grow up. Smoke weed, do whatever you want to with women, objectify women, put stuff in your mouth. Weed you smoke, you sell it to others. You can make a whole industry of not having any responsibility, all the way up from the time you can smoke weed, sell drugs, until you don't have to have any responsibility, no social responsibility, right? So if you look at videos, that's Pleasure Island. Right? But the flip side to that is you have a new trend in the United States where you have a lot of white mothers who consider themselves social justice warriors, liberals. And they come home and they find their white male sons members of the alt-right and become members of the KKK. And a lot of white women, well, how did this happen? I'm going out trying to save the world and make it a better place, going out and doing these things, and I come home and my son has the tendencies that I don't believe in. Where did he get it from? So he's getting those white males are getting these concepts, and they're being attracted by the alt-right, and it's a gateway into the KKK. Because the new version of the KKK doesn't talk about race. It talks about responsibility. And so what do gangs do to attract males? They talk about responsibility. They give them a purpose. And once you have responsibility and purpose, you have direction.
Thanks for joining us at the Institute of African American Males. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
that's what they tap into, right? That's the same way that they're tapping into white males.
Who are you? I'm not talking about your name or your occupation. I'm talking about something bigger, something deeper. I'm talking about your connection to a culture, a history, a destiny. An identity that stretches back and flows forward for centuries. An identity you can glimpse in the face of a grandparent or your child. An identity you know through experience, through people, through places, through music. Our ancestors had a very strong sense of their identity. They could say, I'm a Roman, I'm a Saxon, I'm a Dane. Some could say, I'm a European. To be exiled from their communities and identities would have been a fate worse than death. Today, we seem to have no idea who we are. We're rootless. We've become wanderers. Perhaps we'll also become seekers. We're often told that being an American, or a Briton, or a German, or any European nationality, is about being dedicated to a collection of abstractions and buzzwords. Democracy, freedom, tolerance, multiculturalism. But a nation based on freedom is just another place to go shopping. It's a country for everyone, and thus a country for no one. It's a country in which we ourselves have become strangers. Man doesn't live and man doesn't die for abstractions like freedom. Man lives and dies for a homeland, for a people and its future, for beauty, for the power of being part of something bigger than oneself. Who are we? We aren't just white. White is a checkbox on a census form. We are part of the people's history, spirit, and civilization of Europe. This legacy stands before us as a gift and as a challenge. For what our ancestors took for granted, we must discover, we must renew. Some might say that this task is impossible. But nothing necessary is ever impossible, so long as we avoid and deny our identities. At a time when every other people is asserting its own, we will have no chance to resist our dispossession, no chance to make our future, no chance to find another horizon. So who are we? I guess the real question is, are we ready to become who we are?
And so for white males, stay home, play video games in the basement, don't want to leave the house, afraid to approach women, especially with the new changes in the world with regards to dating, the Me Too movement. Not saying the Me Too movement is bad, it's necessary. But the rules of engagement are different now. And it's whenever you have a situation when one gender has to be the one to approach, and the other one denies, right? And you change the rules of engagement, that's going to cause all different types of problems. So there's a lot of men who are afraid, I don't even know if I want to say, I don't even know if I want to talk to them. But it's not just something that's happened here in the United States. It also happens in places like Japan, right? Industrialized places around the world. Men are afraid to approach women. It's like, man, later for women, I can stay home, watch internet, play video games, plenty of porn. If it wasn't for porn, there wouldn't be an internet. So you can have your own pleasure island in the basement of your parents' house. You don't have to leave. You got Cheetos, talk to folks on the headset, we play video games. Right? But when you play video games, you can enact a different persona. You can be a hero. You can't be a hero in real life. You can't go places and talk to women because you're afraid. You can't go out and conquer. You can't go ride the horse with your sword. But you can play a video game, and in a video game, you can be king of the world. Why leave? All right comes along and says, no. You are somebody. You can make a difference. And they're tapping into that hidden unconscious, right, that men have about wanting to go out and conquer, provide, to go and hunt, and get the girls, and have an adventure, and go all of these things. They're tapping into that. The same thing that the gang members use, tap into to get young black males to join the gang. What's especially interesting is in the United States, you have a lot of black males who feel that they have no hope, there's no chance. Black males go, the only time myself as a black male can have the same outcomes as a white male, as if the black male shows up to a job, the black male has a master's degree, and the white male has been incarcerated. That's the only time the hiring is 50-50. Why go to school? I've had black males come to me and say, why should I go to school? I'm kind of like, I have a PhD and I can't convince something. I'm thinking in the back of my mind, I'm looking at my double consciousness, I'm kind of like, I don't know. I got all types of student loans that I still have to pay for. Right? Am I better off? I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit better off, but I don't think I'm better off from a moral perspective, right? Because the system's against you. Toss the board, toss the game up, start the game over. But you also have white males in the UK who feel that they have no hope. White males in places like Brixton and London are having poor education achievement gaps because they feel that there's no hope and all the minorities are taking over their land. So the low socioeconomic status of white males from white families, low SES, they're having the same education outcomes as black males are having in the United States. The same thing is reflected. So what's the solution and what's the answer? Well, having a rite of passage. A rite of passage is when you have if you remember Roots, you get hoodwinked, you get taken out of society, you get your manhood training, and then you get implemented back into society. That's what a rite of passage. And the rites of passage in Africa are the same rites of passage that they had in Europe, the Vikings, and everywhere around the world. There is a rite of passage, right? You have to separate yourself from society. While you're getting your manhood training, they normally have a ceremony when women come in, and they say, no, we want our sons back. They say, no, you can't have them. And they have a pretend fight, and they push the women back. No, I'm not going to be mama's boy anymore. I'm going to grow up. Then you have thumping. Right? When you get punched in the chest, sometimes they have a stick, boom, boom. Right? Sometimes you get smacked in the head. Right? In martial arts, when you get your degree, every belt, you get punched in the solar plexus, all the way up. Sometimes you get kicked. The physical test, and then once you go through all of those things, then when you get integrated back into society, that's when you're accepted into manhood, and that's when you get your mentorship. Mentorship doesn't happen through a rite of passage because you're not part of the community until you actually graduate. And so what are the steps when you're separated? You have your threshold where you're not really man, not really a boy, that lumen perspective, and then you turn around and become part of society. You have a journey, right? You have a place, you descend below, and then you rise again because you have to discount all the things that you've been and create yourself new and be reborn again. So why is that important? Well, because you have Black Panther. He fell off the cliff. He descended to the underworld. Submerged. Not until Black Panther realized who he was did he become king again. So these tropes these stories from the collective unconscious are appearing over and over and over again. Okay, what things are about that? Tie some things together, then I'm going to leave the remaining time open for questions. So my thinking is, not talking about the consciousness, formation of racial consciousness that plays a role in the formation of gender consciousness based on identity and national consciousness until we get to those things, talking about what we're about to talk about now and more in-depth conversation about black males isn't as meaningful. Otherwise, I could just pull up stats like I did from the very beginning and go over stats, but the stats don't tell the whole story. We need stories from the collective unconscious. So, resurrection and rebirth. This first image on the left, what T'Challa learned, T'Challa's the Black Panther, by the way, just make sure we're on the same page. What T'Challa learned from his adversary, Killmonger, right? Killmonger says, no, don't bury me. Throw me in the ocean with the other blacks who threw themselves in the ocean when they died. Right? So what did he learn from Killmonger? Well, Killmonger was constantly challenging him to be a better person, to be a better king. He says, how can you be a king and support black people when you have all of this technology? You have all of this advancement. Not only are you not helping the world, you're not even helping other black people around the world. They have to fight to the death for him to realize that. So your higher self and your lower self are always challenging you to be more than who you are. That's what we're getting from the Black Panther. And that's what we're getting from these stories. Set and Horus, Cain and Abel, good and evil. The subconscious and the unconscious, the id and the superego are always pulling things from you to try to give you a way to find a better path. Resurrection and rebirth. So once T'Challa realizes that, you know what, there's things that I can do to make this a better planet. And he goes to the UN. And they were like, what do you have to offer? He's like, that's what a movie is. He realized who he was. Right? He had his direction. Now he has his purpose. Right? He ascended. He had the battle versus good and evil. He ascended. Rebirth anew. Rise again. Right? Wearing the mask. All of those things play a big role. But what I wanted to focus on is if we think of the unconscious as relative memory, that could be your family norms, things like that. And then you have the collective unconscious, which has to deal with survival, right? The one part of the consciousness is dealing with immediacy. What's going on right now? What can I benefit from right now? The other part of your consciousness is thinking about the future. That's what sacrifices are for. So if you think about Cain and Abel, Cain was upset at God because his sacrifices were not being honored. What is a sacrifice? It is sacrificing the immediate for the future. Right? So all of these things are playing a role to helping you decide where you need to be. Sometimes you need to focus on the right now, on the present. Sometimes you gotta, maybe I should do this because in a couple other days something else may happen. Right? So this duality between the two. But if we think about consciousness and we think about bias, and we've all heard about this thing called hidden biases, right? Or bias. It's not really racism, it's a bias, right? But what are these biases? Where do they come from? What we know about propaganda was most studied right around World War II, right? When they were studying the Germans, but it wasn't just the Germans, the Europeans, and even the Americans engaged in propaganda. Then we started getting propaganda into science. After the war, we went from propaganda to something called public relations. I'm trying to remember this guy's name. I can't remember his name exactly. Anyway, Carl Jung's nephew wound up being the main guy who created what we know now as public relations, getting people to buy things that they didn't really need nor did they really want. Right? And how did he do that? Well, they tapped into marketing based on the collective unconscious. So we talked about at the very beginning, right, top of the hour, about the collective unconscious. When we market things towards women, how do we market things towards women? We tap into the collective unconscious of nature because women are represented by nature. Look in the field, in the film, there's a woman lying in the field with gold hair, right, barley and hay, right? Women are represented by nature. Men are represented by toughness, rocks, desert. One of the ways they influence, right? But the reason why these things are important and why propaganda is important, public relations are important because of social media. Social media now is so replete, and we're being bombarded not necessarily by new ideas, but multiple images simultaneously that are tapping into our collective unconscious, right? As well as our unconscious, both, maturing both, firing things on, off, and on more rapidly than what's ever happened before. So if we look at what happens with police officers and they see a black male, are they really being racist against black people? Or does that black male represent the shadow from the collective unconscious, and that's the threat? I don't know. But what I do know is that biases has a lot to do with the things that are influencing you from your collective unconscious, as well as your subconscious.